restaurant where I was a waiter had a nephew that was doing relief work. So she said, yeah, I'll go down there and I can get you a good job. But for me, it wasn't that. It was that I saw a news report and I saw this young African-American woman and this young interviewer. He looked like he was from MTV News or something. I think it was CNN. But this young African-American woman, you could see it was like her hair was standing on end out to here. You know, just the trauma, the shock of whatever she had seen was so great that you could just see it. And I was like, I'm going down there and kick some butt. So I went down there and actually took my little cat with me and lived in a tent in City Park in New Orleans. And got a job working in an all-night diner down in the stripper section of the French Quarter. And that was right after the storm. So I mean, from the time I would walk down and tie my cat up into the tree if the raccoons would be there, and then I'd ride my little dirt bike that I found laying, gutter somewhere, and it was just, refrigerators duct taped on every street, cars, just like totally apocalyptic. And then when you have the French Quarter, then all of a sudden there's people. So I think also for me, in terms of facing racism for myself, that was also one of the motivations to go to New Orleans, because their history was so rich, and it's still that way in a lot of senses. That time has kind of stopped in a lot of places. So I hooked up with this group of young college kids one day, and actually I was eating Thanksgiving dinner in the end of the French Quarter before you get to this neighborhood called the Treme, and there's a little park called Washington Park, and a group called Food Not Bombs was making food for people there. They were a whole activist group that had been cooking and doing that stuff for people for years. And one of these young college kids, hey, we heard you cook. You should come and cook for our camp. And I said, well, where's your camp? I said, yeah, we're setting up a relief kitchen in the lower 9th Ward. And I said, in the lower 9th Ward, which is the worst neighborhood in New Orleans. But that was also the neighborhood that was devastated, completely devastated by the storm. You just, literally the houses slid down the street. I mean, it was just totally mind-boggling. So this amazing group of young people set up an entire relief camp. I helped actually design and manage the kitchen, which was in the circus tent. And then we had one of those big geodesic dome tents that we used as a dining hall and a serving line. We also set up tents. We had like a Salvation Army with clothes, and we had computers and internet phones for them. We were there for 6 months, from like October after Katrina until the following May. And then those young people set up, I think, 3 other relief camps, like in Mississippi, Biloxi. What was called, I think we called it the Made with Love Cafe and Grill. But we fed like almost 1,000 people a day for 6 months in the circus tent. So that was also a huge challenge for me. Not only just helping manage the campus, you gotta imagine feeding 1,000 people a day, but then you have like maybe 100 to 150 new volunteers a week, like AmeriCorps kids, people just bussing people in on church buses, just to help, to do whatever they can, And we also gave volunteers a place to stay when they go to muck people's houses out, or just to start helping people rebuild. But while I was there, actually, I got to learn a lot about New Orleans history from many different sources of people. I met Anne Rice's son. I actually met the Prince of Wales when he was there on disaster tour, so I was doing my hair fossil for the first time. And yeah, I met a lot of really cool people. I met actually a man named Rodney Hoover, who was actually from the Hoover family of industrialists. He helped actually fix up, I guess some people would say he gentrified those neighborhoods, but he was really interested in that. So he actually walked me through the whole French Quarter and all the neighborhoods outside the French Quarter and told me the history of how the city arose out of the slavery era. Actually, our camp in the lower 9th Ward was, I think, 1.5 miles away from Andrew Jackson's house. So we could walk to his house, and, because it was a storm, there was nobody there, so we just had free way to hang out and look at everything. But he explained how the land was parceled off after the freed slave movement, how land that had belonged to Native Americans before then were still integrated. Like all of it was just kind of blended in after that era. And then, so a lot of those families that were living in those neighborhoods have never left. Generations of people since that era of Andrew Jackson, their families still are in those houses. So just to contemplate such a massive migration of people that, you know, I don't know, like when you're talking indigenous, that's as indigenous as it gets. So I was fascinated just by the challenges of how do you face those things, you know, like not just as a people, but as individuals. I met so many people, like every day when we were in New Orleans, someone would come up to you and say, can I talk to you? Not one of those stories. I mean, because you would hear just stuff that makes your hair stand on end, you know, just like how did you guys survive that stuff? You know, and then also facing and witnessing the police brutality. I mean, I heard like at least 6 people that I can think of off the top of my head that were just totally brutalized by the police for nothing. I had a guy come into that bar that I was working in, the stripper section of the French Quarter, and he came in and sat at the bar, and the young girl that was behind the bar was actually one of those vampire chicks. She didn't have the fake teeth and everything. And she was working in the bar, and I asked him, you know, do you want anything to eat? Because actually I was not only the waiter, I was also the cook at that stage, because they're just different. He said, well, can I take my shoes off? And I was like, I looked at the girl, and I said, I don't know. She said, oh, sure. And he took his feet off, and literally both socks were just one big scab stuck to his feet. And I said, what happened to you? He said, yeah, I just got out of jail. Like, I don't know what happened, actually. It was my first night down in the French Quarter, and I had something to drink, and I'm from Kentucky. I brought my truck here to help scrape stuff off the streets. And he said, I guess I said the wrong thing to the wrong cop. And I was like, no, actually, they're all like that. Some bad reason. But I mean, I heard that from that guy. I met an African-American guy who actually lost a testicle trying to tell the cops that he wasn't leaving his 90-year-old grandmother in the house. You know, I mean, just story after story of just like ritualized hazing type violence and aggression towards people. So it was really, you know, how do you digest that? You know, so I'm, like I said, my interest, my hobby all my life has kind of been education and language and, you know, cultural education. So for me to see where I come from and to see the disparity just, you know, in terms of the average norm of what you would say, well, this is what you learned in elementary school about American history, about what even the town that you grew up. Like, as close as you get to the real truth is a big statue of Jim Thorpe, you know? And then, you know, seeing New Orleans, for me, was also that teaching of, there's all of this rich cultural, you know, I even got to meet one of the Yoruba and Ashanti priestesses, you know, the voodoo priestesses. And I hung out with her husband, who was actually right over. So it was really challenging to see, because like when I would step out of the French Quarter, and then, you know, I'd go to where, you know, my little apartment that I lived outside the French Quarter, and then on my way back in, I would always have young African dudes come up to me and say, "Are you going in the Quarter?" And I say, "Yes, I'm going in the Quarter. I work there." "Work in the Quarter?" Like, they've never been in the French Quarter, and they live 3 blocks away. You know, like, that kind of disparity to me is like, okay, that's not just about economics, that's not just about education, I mean, that's an entire social reorganization. Like, where do you start? You know, when you're talking about people that are going through post-traumatic stress disorder and traumas that they'll never talk about because it's over, at least. You know? And that was the other thing that was really impressive about New Orleans, was not the not in my backyard thing, but the carpet bagging allergy. Like, anybody that came